What's going on, everyone? It's Richard Dickson here, and welcome to another solo episode of my creatively named self-titled podcast, the Richard Dickson Podcast, where I kind of discuss anything I feel like discussing. It might be business, it might be marketing, it might be government, it might be politics. Really, I don't kind of have a clue what I'm doing with this podcast, to be totally honest. I just use it as an opportunity every week to speak and sometimes to vent a little bit. Now, doing solo podcasts I've found is actually pretty difficult to keep coming up with new ideas, stuff that's like fresh and whatnot. It's not been the easiest thing in the world because I think loads of podcasts you're expecting a guest to come on with specific expert knowledge and subject matter, so you prepare for that, and then even if you're not that knowledgeable on it, you've got enough questions to ask that person to hold a decent conversation. It can be pretty tough. So what I've done is I asked on my social media a couple of days ago, what would you guys like to hear from me in the next episode of my podcast? Now, I've got this all on my phone just now. It's in my archive on Instagram, and I've got a whole bunch of different questions here, none of which I think I would ever do a full podcast on. But I like a lot of the questions, so I think I'm just going to take some time today to answer a few of them. You might have asked me one, there might be specific questions here that you'll enjoy. I'm sure there's also be a couple that probably are totally irrelevant to you that you won't find any interest in. I always think it's good to interact with your audience and to answer specific questions that they have asked you. So there's like 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 19 questions, so some of which, I'll be honest, are absolute nonsense. But the rest of them, I'm going to try and get through as many as possible today in around about a half an hour or so episode of the podcast. If this is your first time watching the podcast or listening to it on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, then I greatly appreciate it. If you've previously been listening and you're not yet subscribed or following or have rated the podcast, I'd really appreciate that. If you could do that right now, it would take like 20 or 30 seconds. So let me have a look through these. Some people have specifically asked not to be named, and some people have not asked that. So I'll be as respectful as possible, and I'll also speak without having to give too many personal details away. Now, someone here who's asked for it not to be shared with their names, I'm going to call you John, has said to me, what to do with a business startup when you have a criminal record? Not a question I've been asked before like that online. It's not something I've spoken on previously. But me personally, I don't have a criminal record. I've never been arrested or anything like that. I think the worst punishment I've had is like penalty points on my driving licence. So I don't know how that goes personally, but I know a lot of people through just my own personal circle and then meeting people at different events. I know a lot of people who have criminal records and who have committed serious crimes and have successful businesses. Now, the first thing I want to say before we even talk about the strategic side of things is that everyone has the capability to change, especially for me, as a young Christian and my opinions that come from my faith. I believe that everyone can be forgiven, everyone can change, that you're not defined by all your actions of the past, you'll be defined more so by what you do now and in the future. So I think it's getting that out of your system first. If you're asking this question, you're saying how to start a business with a criminal record whilst also being an active criminal, whilst trying to money launder, whilst trying to do this, that, the next thing, yeah, I'm not going to be your guy to answer that question. I can't really assist. But if you're saying I'm someone who made a mistake, I've got a criminal record, I've been to prison or whatever, but I'm out now and I'm ready to change, I would like to say that I think you put a much bigger restriction on yourself than actually exists. If you want to be someone who travels around the world for your business, maybe you're not going to be able to do that. I've got friends of mine who I can't go on holiday with, will never be allowed into America because, they've got an assault or any of these things on their criminal record. They're just not deemed safe to go into these countries, even though some of the stories are, someone started beating me up outside the nightclub and I defended myself, and in the process the guy fell and, hit his head and ended up in a bloody coma for a week and is fine now. It doesn't need to be some story of how you're this violent, horrible person. These things happen sometimes. It could happen to anybody. So I think loads of people think having a criminal record is a much worse restriction than it actually is. It's going to play a little bit on your banking options and sometimes the nature of the business that you can open. My recommendation, anytime someone says they're struggling with banking because they've got a criminal record or they've got previous liquidations or insolvencies, whatever it may be, or bankruptcies, I always say Monzo. Monzo business is like the Wild West. I always have a spare Monzo personal and a spare Monzo business for every limited company that I have, just in case you ever get any restrictions, you can't make payments, or there's like a problem with your banking, you can always rely on Monzo. I think you can send up to 50 grand per day without much verification, which also doesn't allow for much security. But really, all I would say is stop thinking about that stuff and stop allowing it to hold you back, because I don't think it's anywhere near as relevant or as important as you seem to think it is. I think people need to stop thinking it's such a big deal. Humans are really good at putting barriers in their way to justify or convince themselves that they can't do certain stuff. So yeah, it's important to stop letting that stuff hold you back. You've made a mistake, you've done something bad in your life. As long as you're not planning on doing that again or using your business as a way to circumvent your criminal activities, then yeah, I'm pretty sure that you're going to be totally fine. It's not as big a deal as you think. David Minton asked me, what's your take on e-commerce? I think it's good. It's not something that I do personally. I advise some people that do some e-commerce stuff, but no, it's not. E-commerce is not my thing, it's not my industry, but I know a lot of really successful e-commerce guys. It's like any business. I don't ever think it's the business models that are wrong. It's normally the attitude and the actions of the people who go and try those things that lead to them failing. So yeah, if you're in e-commerce and you're struggling, I'm sure if you had the right guidance or the right action plan and stuff, it would be a lot better. So I've not got much to say on that, but yeah, I've got no issues with e-commerce. Josh McDonald asked me, Russia, Ukraine unfiltered, not just Ukraine good, Russia bad. I'm going to give you an answer that you won't expect. I don't really know, and I'm also not that interested, right? Now, what I mean by that is I have not got the time available, nor the interest or the motivation to spend time doing enough research on that I feel comfortable speaking about it in an educated way or discussing it or debating it with other people. I've got more important things to think about than putting time into that. I can make a rough guess or a rough idea off of what I've seen in the different people that I follow, but obviously that's going to have a bias, so I don't even discuss it. So yeah, if you're looking for that, I'm probably not your guy, to be honest. So Leo has asked me, do one about the first ever Scottish boxing event. Obviously, I guess he's talking about the Caz Milligan property boss thing. If you're not in Scotland, you won't have much of an idea of this, more than likely. My thoughts on that event. I think it was always going to come. The influencer boxing thing is really popular at the moment, but I wouldn't have ran it how it's been ran. I think there's, and by the way, it's Caz running it, and let's face it, he's not like an events entrepreneur, so who am I to expect him to go and, run and plan an event perfectly? He's going to learn a lot of stuff and be able to apply that if he wants to go and do another event. First things that I would have changed is I don't think there's enough fights. From what I understand, there's like 4 or 5 fights. Like, having events experience in my business, but also being involved in the Scottish kind of combat sports scene for so many years, you need to have more volume than that, especially if you want to keep people around and the bar and the venue wants to make money and all that. Definitely to have more fights. I've not really been keeping up to date with it. I just get anything I see maybe on Caz's stories on Instagram because we know each other and follow each other, but I don't have the TikTok app or anything anymore. So, and when people are talking about, and Higgy's doing this, I don't have a clue who Higgy is. You could get me 10 people in the street and say, who's Higgy? I'd be like, I don't know. And Matty and this, and the only person I know on that card, minus obviously Caz and Alan Shields, is Hawaii Five-O, is Jordan, because I know Jordan, like, personally, I didn't even know the boy Jasper that he's doing it with, because I don't watch content on that platform. So I also know that I'm not the target audience, by the way. So that's not me saying that because I don't know them, it's wrong. That's not my point. It's probably the perfect people for the audience that actually this event is made for. So I'm not the target audience anyway. But I definitely would have had more fights. And from what I've heard from a couple of people, I think there's like, maybe this could be total hearsay. I don't know if this is true, so I'm certainly not putting out this fact. But some people are saying no fighters have signed any contracts, and it could be, fighting's an emotional thing. People get worried or nervous or scared. I don't think there's been any pullouts, which has been really impressive. But I'm recording this the week off. This will be coming out on Friday, and I think the event's on like maybe Friday or Saturday or Sunday, like this week. But I think if they don't sign contracts, it's really risky, because there's no reason for them to turn up other than the fact that they want to fight. I don't know if they're getting paid or whatever. I don't imagine so, because I also don't imagine there's huge money in an event like that, especially the first one. I think the concept kind of needs to be proved for a lot of people to want to go to it and stuff like that. So yeah, I'm interested. To finalise, I'm interested to see how it goes, and I'm interested to see if it rolls into something else. One thing I would also say for the next one is, having ran events, like large-scale events with like hundreds of people at it, and having also fought, I couldn't imagine anything worse than doing all of that in one night. Like, I don't know how Caz is going to be able to focus on his fight, because, there's a problem on the door, these people are saying they're on the guest, like, all this crap, then he has to run down and deal with it, and then constant adrenaline dumps and drops, That's not good for you when you're going to go and fight. And he won't be able to just go and tune out, because Caz is he's like a solopreneur. He doesn't have a team. He's always going to have a support team there on the day, aka like Mayhem, what I'm sure will help, and there'll be security people doing security. It's not like Caz going to be on the door stamping people in, right? Obviously not. But he's not got a personal dedicated team, like assistants and stuff like that work directly for him, salaried by him. So he will still be very involved in directing the event and getting questions asked of him, whereas I knew when I was fighting, I just wanted to tune out, put my earphones in and be like, no one speak to me until it's time to warm up, and then after that, no one speak to me until it's my time to walk. I don't care. I wouldn't go out and watch other people's fights, because I didn't want to get an adrenaline dump from seeing them win or lose or whatever it may be. So I'll be intrigued to see if Caz, if he chooses to do another event like this. By the way, this might open the door for other people wanting to do this style of event. I don't know. But if he chooses to do another one after this, I'm interested to see if he's fighting on it, he'll maybe get someone else to try and manage the event, even though he'll really be involved with promoting. Or maybe he'll do another event where he is purely just promoting and he's maybe not fighting. I'm not quite sure how it's going to go, but I'm intrigued, definitely, because it might open up a whole new avenue for the influencer scene in Scotland, or it might not, because at the end of the day, it's the first one being done. It's a big risk, and you need to take your hat off to people for doing that. You need to say, well done, you've taken that risk. It's not the easiest, most risk-free thing to do in the world. It could flop so hard that it could go amazing, or somewhere in the middle. So someone needs to do it, and I definitely take my hat off to Caz for that. I'm just curious to see if it becomes something that is more fruitful in the future. Although knowing Caz, I imagine that he's not running this to make an events business, to continually run social media influencer boxing events in Scotland. I know already that his plan is that maybe do one or two of these and he gets some type of highlight reel finish on someone, or a clip or something goes super, super viral, and he gets on a Misfits undercard or Kingpin, and then that then rolls on from there. That's how I imagine. The end goal is not to be an influencer boxing event in Scotland, and I think that's correct. That's the best thing you could be doing. Let's see. So many people ask me about golf, which is weird, because I'm a decent golfer and I play enough. I've really not played very much for the last 12 months. I've really been off the ball, but it's funny how many people have asked me here. So This username, I don't have a clue what your name is. It's just letters and series of numbers. But then also Ollie Many, a guy I've known for many, many years. Talk about golf. Why did you start it? Favourite courses, aims for the year, and why you like it. Ollie's like a really high level caddy, really good player as well. So I understand why that's a topic of interest for him. I started golf because my dad played golf, so he used to take me, and he showed me how to play. And you know, as much as we didn't have big family holidays or like a big house or like that much stuff, I was very rich in experiences from a young age. Like if I wanted to go to like a club or something like that, my mum and dad would just make sure, however it happened, that it happened. So I got like golf lessons and stuff like that when I was younger. Group golf lessons, not like private one-to-one lessons, but it was World of Golf in Clydebank at the time. I can't remember what it's called now. What is it called? Like just the golf place that's on Great Western Road. So we used to go there to like the junior classes and stuff. Me and my sister both went, and I just loved it. I thought it was a really good sport. It was a great opportunity to spend time with my dad. I liked walking about the course and stuff. It's just something I enjoyed from a very young age. My favourite courses, the two Trump courses in Scotland are incredible. I love the Luxury Collection in Aberdeen, and a huge fan of Turnberry as well. Both really, really, really fun courses. I've played abroad as well in the States and in Spain and Portugal, and I've enjoyed all of those courses. But I would say in Scotland, my personal favourite is going to be Turnberry. That's just me. I just absolutely love Turnberry. But if you're anything more than like a 14, 15 handicap, I genuinely wouldn't go. Personally, I don't know how you would be able to enjoy it, because it's not easy. It's definitely not easy. I also love Close House down south. That was a great course. Played that in 2019 or 2020, and it was absolutely incredible. Really, really loved it. So yeah, that's some of my favourites. My aims for this year, I have no golfing aims this year. I don't even have a club just now. My last club was Marl Hall, and it's went drastically downhill. I think it's a really poor facility now. I don't know if they've kept their star rating for 5-star, but if they have, I will be absolutely amazed. I don't think it's anywhere near as good as it was, but also it's not super expensive as a golf club, so you need to take that into consideration as well. But they used to not play winter greens and stuff, and now they do, and it's just like a bit meh. So I don't even have a course just now, so I'm not sitting here thinking, oh, I want to get down to an 8 handicap or a 7, or like that's not what I'm thinking about. I've got some golf to play with my dad. We've got a couple of little individual rounds booked at like Machrihanish and different places like that, so we'll see how they go. And maybe I'll join a club in summer, you know. But right now I'm really, really focused and dialed in on the business, and I don't really feel bad about that. Like I'm choking to go and play golf, I'm choking to do other stuff, you know. I just think it's a really great sport. It's good for networking as well. Also in terms of entrepreneurship, it can be hard because it does take ages. Sometimes you've been out, if you're, you know, stuck behind a whole bunch of people, you could be 4 or 5 hours out playing with one of your friends, you know. So it has good sides and bad sides, the game of golf. Let me see. Would I set up a multi-trade company for your property flips? No. Simple answer, no. That's just me personally. It's not really my thing. Relationships as a high net worth individual. I guess that depends on what you define a high net worth individual, but I've spoken on this topic many times. I'll be very, very brief here. And it's my friend Dr. Maz Sadiq that's asking this. Good friend of mine. I've known him for a long time now. And I know that this question for him is loaded. Not loaded in the sense he's trying to catch me out, but I know his opinions on this topic as well. Me and him are very, very similar on this. Now, relationships, you start making money, just automatically get harder. You start to be a lot more lacking in trust. Are you with me because of me? Are you with me because I have this stuff? That's natural, you know. You start to question a lot of stuff. Also depends the circles in which you move. That's going to determine. I'm going to talk about women here because that's my experience. Depends on the type of women that move inside of your circle. I'm not like a party guy. I don't go to nightclubs. I don't like going out to nightclubs. I don't particularly have like a humongous personal issue if my girlfriend goes to a nightclub at some point, but I also wouldn't be in a relationship with like a club rat. It's two totally different things. And by the way, people turn around and say, oh, that makes you insecure that you don't want your girlfriend going to nightclubs like 4 or 5 nights a week. No. Someone who's actually insecure is the person who lets someone do whatever they want and doesn't have any boundaries. That's insecurity, because you think to yourself, I could never get another girl, I could never get this, I could never get that. This is like, I can't risk this, so you're willing to... No guy in the world wants their girlfriend to be a club rat, out like 4 nights of the week, steaming and all that. Like, it's just... It's bad for them, it's dangerous, it's asking for trouble, right? It's just pointless, right? So yeah, if you're going out for your friend's birthday or whatever, and it depends on the individual whether you trust them or they are trustworthy. But if my circle was, I'm a successful young guy, so I go out and get bottles every weekend, and I've got birds in the booth and all that kind of stuff, that's a horrendous pool to be in for dating. Let's just face it, because you're going to be getting club rats. Girls who are attracted to, oh, he's in the VIP bit with bottles, let's go and sit with him. And the next thing you're in a relationship with her, and like, I don't want to say plainly, but, if you peep the service history, you're probably going to get a bloody shock. So that's not the circles in which I move. So thankfully, I'm removed from that stuff. That doesn't mean I've always picked well in my life, certainly not. Also doesn't mean that I've always been perfect. Just because I'm a high net worth young guy doesn't mean that I am absolved of any problems that I have. That would be unfair. But it should give you a degree of choice and a bit more freedom in terms of your dating. And also as a man, there's a little bit less pressure on you, because there's no real timestamp on you having kids and stuff like that. There's less of a physical pressure on you to get stuff done fast. So I would definitely say, take it, and I've been guilty of this, take it way slower than you think you need to if you've got something that is worth protecting. I don't think there's anything wrong with prenups. I don't think there's anything wrong with protecting your assets. As long as you are willing to, provide well, and I believe in, you don't get married for a laugh. You shouldn't have any intentions of marrying someone if you don't truly think, you're going to be there for the long haul. That's my opinion. So if you get married, you should never have any plans of divorce. You should never mention divorce. You should never joke about divorce. Like, I know that sounds mental, but like, if I'm married, I'm not going to be like, oh, you better get that thing done or I'm going to divorce you. I don't even want that to be spoken about in the air in my house or in my relationship. I think it's stupid. So, and also, if you're not like a prick, if you did break up with that person, you did divorce, you don't need the law to determine your own kindness and provision for that person. Now, I guess if you got cheated on or something terrible, you would maybe have a bit of a vendetta there, so it's slightly different. But if I have kids with someone that doesn't work out and we end up separated, I'm going to financially support that woman and those kids for as long as is required, because that's just your responsibility in that position. You don't need paperwork to tell you that. It's based on your moral compass. So I don't think there's anything wrong with prenups and all that kind of stuff, as long as you're not like an arsehole, basically. It's a topic that I could talk about for hours and hours and hours, but it's one that I think is sometimes overspoken about online just now, especially from people that don't have a bloody clue. They'll just jump in on bandwagons to talk about the Matrix or whatever, and sound pretty stupid doing so. Let me pick one more, right? One more. We've still got a few in here, right? Let me see. Someone asked about Jake Paul and Mike Tyson. Nope. Not commenting on that. Not commenting on that. I've also did a podcast / videos on the daily struggles of running a business from Idris Salwa. Oh, geez, I could do a series of about 40 videos on that. Honestly, the things that I find the most difficult is focus and time allocation. Not because I'm not focused and I don't allocate time well, but because you're constantly fighting fires every day. When it is your business and you're dialed in, you're doing something, people will still come in and need you for something, and they do truly need you. And you need to take your attention away from the task that you're doing to fix that thing. By the time you come back, you forgot where you were or what your point was, or you've moved on to another task and something is in delay. So even though I'm hiring a lot of people just now, we've got 4 stage 2 interviews inside the next week, so that could potentially be 4 new members of staff in the next week, depending on how well they do, you know, and that's like a good thing, obviously, but at the same time, it's just like, yo, it's not the easiest thing in the world, right? So allocation of time and focus and how you deal with pressure, an entrepreneurial roller coaster. Sometimes I wake up in the morning and I'm so excited, I'm so buzzing to get into the office. Then I get in here and I'm like, what the hell did I do this for? And then 5 minutes later, I'm like, I love it. I've got such a buzz off my business. Then 20 minutes later, oh, geez, this is absolutely brilliant. This is just the life of an entrepreneur. So you need to understand, I've said this before, if you choose to run a business, you're choosing for every aspect of your life to be objectively harder for the foreseeable future. Your personal relationships will be harder, romantic relationships will be harder, finances will be harder, especially at the start. The pressure you put on yourself will be greater, your degree of responsibility will be greater, your sleep will be worse, your exercise will be worse, your diet will suffer. There's so many things that's going to get worse, but the payoff potentially is huge. So you make that agreement with yourself, you know, and you take the risk, you do the thing, and if it works, awesome. If it doesn't, it's not the end, in my opinion. You pick it up and try again. I'm going to take some lessons and I'm going to go for it, right? If I lost everything, I would just have to start again. I couldn't find myself in a job. The only time I would find myself taking a job is in addition to working on building something, and the only reason I would do it is if I had kids. I had to provide for kids. I've done it. I know I can have 40p noodles 4 or 5 times a day and tap water. I'll be fine. I'm not going to be the healthiest person in the world, right? I'm not going to be super nutritious, but I'm fine doing that. I'll never put my kids through that. So that's where I'll draw that line. But it wouldn't be, all right, I'll just go back to career and not do anything. I'll have to do everything at once, but I need to make sure I've got enough money in there to at least clothe and feed them properly and give them opportunities, right? But I don't even think about that just now because it's just me, and I also don't plan on losing my business. So it's kind of a pretty easy situation to find myself in. But yeah, time allocation and focus for me are some of the hardest things to deal with. And also putting your trust into a team. So when you start getting staff, hiring the right people, having confidence to, you know, actually allocate tasks to those people. Sometimes I can be so guilty of having team members whose jobs are to do specific tasks, and I just go, oh, I'll just do it myself. I still do that to this day. So it's having trust in other people, and sometimes that trust will get broken as well. But it's a stage you need to go through and be comfortable allocating tasks and delegating to other people. I've really enjoyed doing this little question time. Maybe I'll do this every month or 6 weeks or something like that. I've really enjoyed that. Some of the questions were absolute nonsense, hence why I didn't answer them. Some were pretty decent, but just were not topics for me to speak on just now, or maybe a bit too expansive, and I want to maybe do a full episode on them. So if you put in a question, thank you very much. I really appreciate it. Like I've already said, if you've enjoyed this, feel free to subscribe on YouTube if that's where you're watching this, or to follow on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. I would love to have you here for the extended journey of this podcast. Like I always say every week, I'm planning on getting guests on soon. We're going to get guests on soon, and we will. But I think this is always going to be a majority solo podcast, because for me personally, that's how I really love doing it, because it gives me a chance to get stuff off my chest and talk to my audience in a pretty real and raw and authentic way, which is always fun for me. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll catch you all very, very soon. Cheers.